All right. In this video, I want to talk about some more silly arguments that come from these Catholics and Orthodox. And it's weird how they do this. It makes no sense. But you can sit there and say, I am sola scriptura, right? I believe what I believe because I read it for myself in the Word of God. And the Catholics and the Orthodox, they're too arrogant to hear you. They don't care what you have to say. So what they hear is, oh, I believe Luther. I believe Calvin. Because they're like, sola scriptura was invented by Calvin and Luther and the Reformers. No one believed it until Calvin and Luther, right? And they'll start attacking Luther and Calvin and talking about the stuff they believe and don't believe and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, I don't care, right? Why are you wasting your time talking about Luther and Calvin? I follow God. I'm sola scriptura, not sola scriptura and Luther, or sola scriptura plus Calvin, you know? Why are you wasting your time bringing these people up? I don't follow them. I follow the scriptures. And sola scriptura is clearly taught in the scriptures, starting with Moses being told by God himself to write the Torah and to write in it that not to add or remove from his words. And if anybody came claiming to speak for Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, God himself, that if they added or removed doctrines from what Moses was told to write, if they made a false prediction, they contradict what the Torah says, they are clearly not of God, right? Because God is not going to correct his writing. He told Moses to write, knowing full well the future, and told him what to write, knowing that it would never have to be changed. So when he sends prophets, you'll notice that the prophets that are true try to get people to go back to what is written, to the Torah, to follow the Torah, and they shine light on the Torah. And that's how we were able to know that the rest of scriptures, the Old Testament and New Testament, are of God because they line up with what God told Moses to write, because God is not the author of confusion. And whatever he has given lines up together. It doesn't contradict itself. It doesn't need to be changed and edited, right? And Jesus himself, in Matthew and Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 13, shows sola scriptura, where the magisterium of the time, the Pharisees, are upset that the disciples of Jesus are not following the traditions of the elders or the traditions of the early church, all right? And Jesus is like, so what? And it's not even a bad tradition. It's about washing their hands and washing the dishes. And he's like, I don't care. Showing that it doesn't matter. What matters is keeping the word of God, the scriptures, right? And he even refers to what Moses wrote as the word of God, right? The commandments of God, right? He's showing that Jesus is sola scriptura, which means not that there's only scriptures. It means that the scriptures are the sole authority, which means that the magisterium and the traditions have to submit to the scriptures, or else they're not of God. And this is obvious. That's why Jesus is always saying, you do err not knowing the scriptures. Have you not read? It is written when he fights Satan in Matthew chapter 4. Every time he's tempted, he goes with what is written in the scriptures. He doesn't even use his own authority. He uses the word of God, giving us an example of to follow that. Paul, an apostle, blessed with the Spirit to the point where he actually rose someone from the dead, had no problem in Acts 17:11 with the Bereans testing what he said to the scriptures to see if it lined up with the scriptures. He didn't say, hey, you can't go do that. You need me to understand the scriptures in the first place. He was like, no, these people are noble for doing it. He wasn't worried about it. Sola scriptura is not something that's invented by Luther and Calvin. They believed that because they read the scriptures and they could see that that's what the scriptures actually teach. So you can go ahead and cross these people out and bash them all you want. I don't even really care. Because sola scriptura is clearly taught in the scriptures. And you can say, oh, that's by my interpretation. Okay, it's by my interpretation, whatever. I'm going to have to answer to God for myself, right? So I'm going to go find out the truth for myself and talk to God saying, guide me in all truth. Because I'm trusting you that you are the creator. This is your word. And you're going to judge me someday. So get me right with you. Because I'm walking through this life blind. And your word's supposed to be a light to guide us through life. So please help me. So if I'm led astray, trusting in his word, that's on him. But if I'm led astray following your church, whether it's the Catholic or the Orthodox church, well, that's on me. Why did I go to them and not to God? Why did I blindly accept their interpretation when I read it and I don't see what they're saying in the scriptures? The scriptures aren't saying what these churches are saying. So why would I believe them? To do so would be to contradict God, to go against his word, to go against my own conscience, and to just not think. And then I'm going to go answer to God and be like, well, I followed them because they said they were your church. I didn't want to be rude and call them a liar. Right? And you think that's going to be, oh, okay, I get it. You didn't want to be rude. That's why you went into error. Okay. You're free to go. That's not how it's going to work. Right? So I'm going to be sure that I'm right with God by going to him myself. Because God's no respecter of persons. So I can go to him myself. And if your church is true, you should have no problem with that. Because then God was going to lead me to your church. But the fact that you have a problem with that is very telling and shows that you're worried that a genuine person trying to find God is not going to be led to your church. Right? And if you're saying, well, I'm not being genuine, that's why I'm not being led to your church, well, then why do you want me to just blindly submit to it anyway and pretend that I believe if I'm fake in the first place? Because obviously you don't care. You just want people to submit to your church. But anyway, that's that. Part 17. The silly arguments continue. So thanks again for your time and attention. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself, and may God bless you and yours.